everybody, today I wanted to film for you a wrap up of all the books I read in August, which was 4 books, which felt really good after last month I only managed to read 1 book because I was in a bit of a reading slump. And then this month I've been really busy with book related stuff, and also of course the kids have been off. So reading 4 books felt really good. So I'm going to go through these in the order that I read them as usual. And the first book that I read this month was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I read this on Kindle. And this was my book club read, and although we haven't got together to discuss this yet. And this was one that was suggested and I kind of said, yeah, I've seen that around. And then I downloaded it and I didn't read the blurb or anything, didn't know anything about it until I literally started reading it. And as soon as I read the historical note at the start of the book, I was really excited. So let me read that to you. It says, I've just got to navigate to the right page. Is it here? No, next bit. In the 1580s, a couple living in Henley Street, Stratford, had 3 children, Susanna, then Hamnet and Judith, who were twins. The boy, Hamnet, died in 1596, aged 11. 4 years or so later, the father wrote a play called Hamlet. And I read that and went, ooh, because I had no idea that was what it was about. I hadn't made the connection between Hamnet and Hamlet, which supposedly were interchangeable names. But also, I love a bit of Tudor literature because as a teen, I mean arguably still now, I am a bit of a nerd about Tudor stuff. I used to read so much stuff about the Tudors and watch documentaries and anything to do with the Tudors. I loved it. I'm a big fan of Jean Plaidy and all of her Tudor royalty books. And yeah, my husband kind of moans if we're watching something to do with the Tudors, because I'll be like, oh, well, actually, or, well, you know, it just really annoys him. So I read that and thought, oh, this is very exciting. So the book actually more follows Hamnet's mother, Agnes, than it does Hamnet. So it switches perspective from him in the last few days before he dies, and then with his mother going from when she was a girl, and then with her marrying Shakespeare, and with her having her kids, and then up to the finale. And when this book started, about the first third, I really, really enjoyed, because Agnes is a bit of a wise woman. She knows all about herbs, and she's her own person. She goes against what everybody thinks she should be doing, and I don't know. I found her really intriguing to read, I guess. And one thing that was quite funny is that she kind of reads people's futures by gripping them between their thumb and their forefinger in their webbing. And it made me laugh because my youngest, when she's tired or overwhelmed or anything like that, her comfort thing is she'll hold your hand and then she like pinches there. And so it just made me laugh. So there were lots of little things that I enjoyed. I was enjoying the setting, I liked the characters, I was thoroughly enjoying reading it. But I felt like as time went on, it lost something for me. It was still good, but it just wasn't quite as exciting. I think Agnes seemed to become less of an exciting character as time went on. After she'd had her children, she became less of a rebel, less independent. I don't know, my love for her dwindled. I found that Hamnet was not a very exciting character, and his perspective took up part of the book, and obviously he's like the core theme of the book, core thing of the book. And he was just like a kid. He didn't have anything particularly interesting or exciting about him. There was a strange, I didn't dislike it, but a thing where Shakespeare is never referred to by name. He's called like my husband, or the husband, or the man, or the father, or he's never once called William. The name Shakespeare is never used, which is interesting. There's lots of interesting relationships in the book, but I just felt like as time went on, whereas in the beginning it was kind of exciting, or I wonder where this is going to go, I felt like it just became less so and more predictable. And by the culmination of the book, I'm still enjoying it, but it didn't have that excitement for me. And I think that it's tricky, I guess, when you know what's going to happen in a book, because it literally says in the historical notes that you know Hamlet's going to die, and I think that's quite a tricky thing to work with. And I felt like I wasn't intrigued by what would happen, or, you know, how the relationships would pan out, or how the characters would change. I just felt a bit flat, I suppose. So I did really enjoy it. I still gave it 3 stars. It's very readable. It's an interesting idea, but my point is basically I loved the beginning and then that just tailed off. So it's good. Give it a go for a bit of Tudor reading, which is always a pleasure. Then I went on to Dan Brown's Inferno. This has been sat by the side of my bed probably for a year. It used to be on my bookcase and I had a bit of a clear out. It was my son's party the other day, that's why the cards are up. His birthday was about a month ago, but yeah, he's just had his party. Anyway, so I cleared this off the bookcase because it was taking up a lot of space, and I thought, well, I'll read it and then I'll put it back if I decide I want to keep it, or I'll move it on once I've read it if it's not something I want to keep. And although this has been sat by the side of my bed waiting to be read, I just haven't reached for it. And I think that's because I think the only other book I've read by Dan Brown is The Da Vinci Code. And I was underwhelmed by it. And I think that's because I read it when all the hype was about, when the film was going to come out, when everybody was super excited about The Da Vinci Code. And I think I just didn't get that same response from it. And so, yeah, I just found myself not really reaching for this because I wasn't that bothered by The Da Vinci Code. Anyway, so I think The Da Vinci Code is the 2nd in this series and Inferno is the 4th. And it doesn't matter, I did double check before I started reading it, but it doesn't matter, you can read them out of order. You might miss certain character points, but other than that, they absolutely run in isolation. And the Dan Brown, I forget what they're called, Robert Langdon books, each are set over the course of 24 hours. And Robert Langdon is a symbologist, and so they all follow him kind of looking at art and culture and history and trying to solve a puzzle, I guess. So in Inferno, Robert Langdon wakes up with no memory of what's happened to him over the last few days, and then somebody kind of bursts into the hospital room and everything kicks off and he has to flee, and he then has to figure out what happened to him over the last few days. He's been getting like flashbacks and he needs to figure out what those are and needs to solve the whole thing. So I enjoyed this a lot more than I enjoyed the Da Vinci Code, although that might just be my memory of the Da Vinci Code. Inferno, as you'd guess, talks a lot about Dante's Inferno and all related, you know, artworks that reflect on Dante's work, and it's based in Florence, and it's all themed around that kind of thing. So I found it interesting because that is not something I know a lot about, and so it was interesting to be learning whilst you're reading fiction. And so yeah, I like that. It's very, very action-packed. It's quite long, but that's not because it's kind of meandering and slow. It's full-on, lots is happening, it keeps your attention, but it is quite a long book. It's about 600 pages, yeah, nearly. This book also has themes around overpopulation and the environment, so that was really interesting. Just sort of brought lots of interesting ideas and thoughts together in quite an action-packed way. The culmination of this book was not what I would have expected and was quite thought-provoking. And I would say in general, it was just a read that kept me reading. Well said, Emma. A book that kept me reading. It was, as I say, action-packed. It was interesting. It's not my favourite, but I did really enjoy it. And as I say, I definitely enjoyed it more than the Da Vinci Code. So I think I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed reading it, and I would reach more readily for Dan Brown's books. The kind of archaeology and art history and that kind of thing isn't my passion, but it's still interesting. So yeah, not my favourite book, but still really, really good. So I liked that. So the last 2 books that I read this month are from the library. I was really excited to find that one of our local libraries had just reopened, so I grabbed some bits for the kids and some for me. And the first book that I read this month was, the first of those that I read this month was So Lucky by Dawn O'Porter. I've wanted to read one of her books for ages. I've been aware of her for a really long time, and when she started writing books, I wanted to read them but just haven't picked them up. And so I saw this, it was on the new arrivals stand, although it's not a new release, it's just new to them. It was released in 2019. So This book is about three women, Ruby, Beth and Lauren. Ruby is a single mum to a toddler, and she's really struggling with looking after a young kid and also with a condition that it takes quite a long time in the book to explain what that condition is. But so a lot of the book it's kind of quite just suggested, and you don't know what it is she's struggling with. Beth is married with a new baby, and she has gone back to work full-time shortly after the birth of her baby, and her husband is looking after the child, and things are quite becoming more and more tense. And then Lauren is most of her parts of the book are written as Instagram posts, and she's living this perfect life. She's this beautiful woman who's marrying a guy from Dragon's Den, and she's living the dream in her Instagram post. So I really liked this because I felt that the characters were really interesting, really just often with women's literature, the characters can seem not really real or a bit stereotypical, and I just didn't feel like these women were. It just felt like the characters were really well-rounded, I would say, with the exception of Beth's assistant, who was a bit of a stereotypical millennial. But other than that, I just enjoyed reading them and really wanted to know what happened with them, and they were all really flawed. And I mean, that was the point really, to say that what you think is going on with somebody is not really what's going on with them, and that these women are all, you know, they're not, it doesn't all come out perfectly, it's kind of complex, and so I really like that. It did have the trope of the women all working in creative industries. However, they weren't living like the real high-end London life, which is often the case in women's literature. It was a bit more realistic than that. But Ruby is a photo editor, Beth is a wedding planner, and Lauren is an influencer, you know, so there's that. You never really read these books and they're like, one of them's a cashier, and one's an electrician, and one's a teacher, I don't know. So yeah, they were in the creative industries, which is a bit of a thing. But however, I really enjoyed the characters, and it has a lot of like bad language, it's quite crude in parts, but I like that, it was quite funny. I read this at just the right time when I needed to read something light because I had loads of stuff going on with work stuff, and it was just the perfect kind of diversion. I felt that it was just a really warm and compelling women's literature. If you like women's literature, give this one a go. It was a really good one. Yeah, there's nothing more really to say about that one. So I really like that and definitely want to read more of her stuff. And the last book I picked up this month was The Lido by Libby Page. I picked this up because I liked the cover and I liked swimming, and it really didn't go much further than that. This was on the new arrival stand as well, although this came out in 2018, I think. Yeah, so not new either, just new to the library. But yeah, so I was just attracted to the cover and grabbed that. So this book is about Rosemary and Kate. Rosemary is 86 and Kate is 26. Kate is a journalist and she is covering the closure of the Lydo in Brixton, and Rosemary attends the Lydo and has been going to the Lydo her whole life and just loves swimming there and goes swimming practically every day. And they meet as a result of Kate covering that story and become friends, and Kate tries to help Rosemary to stop the Lydo from being closed. And I just really, really loved this book. Again, it was like a feel-good book. It was what I needed to read at the time, just really diversionary, really warm, just a nice thing to read. So first of all, I like swimming, and I like that the writing talked about how wonderful swimming is because I really like it. It was just, yeah, it's just a theme I enjoy. And I like a Lido. I tend to prefer a Lido cut into the sea, but I do enjoy a Lido. So yeah, so I like that. I also like the themes of community within this book. So there's a lot of, there's some characters in the community who are only mentioned once, and there's just some lovely chapters where it just talks about Brixton and about people passing by and just the interactions between people that I loved. But it also has some real core characters who all support one another and care about each other. And I love that when that's set in Brixton, which is obviously a really an area with a really high population and I think you can often think that they don't have that kind of cohesiveness. It was lovely to have a book that really did celebrate that, and where all the people in the community were supporting each other, and I loved that, because I do love a bit of community. I also loved that Rosemary and Kate were really different ages, because I think there's a kind of an unspoken rule that you become friends with people who are the same kind of age as you and in the same kind of life stage as you. And I love stuff that celebrates friendship, like intergenerational friendship, and it was just really lovely. I really liked that. So yeah, it was just lovely. And had a lot of things that I enjoy in a book, and so I rated this one 5 stars because I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was just simple and nice, but a brilliantly simple and nice book. And Libby Page's writing was absolutely beautiful, so I thoroughly enjoyed the Lido, and actually I enjoyed all of these books this month, and so that's really nice. So let me know if you've read any of these and what you think of them. I would love to know, and let me know what you're reading at the moment and any recommendations you have for me. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Please hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Take care.